Hello, listeners. I hope everyone is doing well this week. In this episode, I do have some big news. The news is that after this episode, there will only be 4 more episodes where I will be the Get Fit guy. I would like to take this episode to state my reasons for this decision. I hope I can leave everyone with 4 really good episodes to listen to before I sign off. Now, I don't have any hierarchy of reasons here. I'm not listing these in order of importance, just the order in which I'm writing them out, okay? So, first up is reasons of what I'm going to call morality and value capture. So everyone that's been listening has heard me yapping on about philosophy often enough, so it shouldn't be a surprise that that has influenced my thought process. And I'm going to go ahead right now and plant my flag and say I am a utilitarian. That is, that the greatest happiness for the greatest number is the measure of right and wrong. I'm a pretty objective person, and I can say when I look at things, for sure the episodes I record now are simply not as good as the ones I did right at the beginning. And that's not because I'm not trying, or that I'm not interested in sharing things about fitness. It's quite simply what many people with an online presence experience, and I believe it's known as creator burnout. Now, fitness is a pretty small subject area, actually. We're just talking about going to the gym and doing things there. And normally when we talk about fitness and training, there would be an element in that which would include nutrition and even psychology. So when we remove those two things, the subject area that we can talk about significantly shrinks. Now, this network of shows does have a nutrition show, and it does have a psychology show. And whilst no one has directly said that I can't talk about those things, it's implied. Now, if the nutrition diva started making episodes about squatting, I'd probably think she needed to stay in her lane. So it's no different for me. I don't think I should be making recommendations about things I don't know a huge amount about. Now, I do know how to do research. That is a skill set I have developed. But I just don't think that some research I can do means that I know a lot about the subject. And I've mentioned this in the show before. I just can't come up with brand new things to say about fitness every single week. Certainly not after 2.5 years. The subject area is far too limited. And that's why some hosts of other shows have ended up going off the rails completely and going down rabbit holes talking about crystals and chakras and sunning your butt. It's the need to come up with something new week in and week out. And I'm not the kind of person that's going to suddenly leave my belief system behind in order to just create content for likes and listens. And, you know, the fact that I can see that these episodes are not saying anything new, then I had to take a utilitarian view, simply that the audience could benefit more from a fresh perspective than from me repeating the same stuff over and over. Because really this podcast could be, go to the gym and do something there. Record what you've done, go back to the gym next week and do the same thing with more intensity. And repeat. And that's it. Podcast done, literally forever. That's how you get fitter, it's how you get stronger, and it's how you develop any skill in life. If you want to learn how to play the piano, you start with something more simple, and then next week you add a bit more complexity, and the next week you add a bit more complexity. And this brings me on to value capture. I've spoken on the show about value capture before, and I guess I talked about it probably in terms of gamification, where your values are captured by something like a wearable device. And this is based on the work of an American philosopher at the University of Utah called C.T. Nguyen. See show notes for the spelling. And value capture is where the kind of sophisticated value system of a person or a culture is captured and then replaced by that of an external entity. If you think about examples of cultural value capture, could be something like colonization. where Western values were imposed upon indigenous cultures. And this external value capture replaces a quality-driven set of values with quantitative data instead. This is because an algorithm can't judge the success of something on people's happiness or how connected an audience feels to a host. An algorithm can only deal in data like download figures, completion rates. And I would argue that if one person listened to 50% of an episode and then had a life-changing outcome from that, that's more meaningful than 10,000 people listening to 100% of an episode, but an hour later they can't even remember what the episode was about. But reporting systems from podcast platforms cannot provide that kind of data. We don't know what kind of life-changing things have occurred to people from listening to this show or any other show. So it ends up that you're a slave to the figures. We end up selling out on our values just to make content that boosts downloads. This allows a network to then go and ask for more money from advertisers that drives revenue. It's how the system works. I consider value capture to be immoral. So again, I don't think I can continue because I'm unable to grow the show in the way that a business would want. Can I have a loyal following of listeners? Yes. Can I have a super huge one? Probably not. I'm too much of a black and white thinking curmudgeon. Or as we say in the UK, I'm a bit like Marmite. And I've heard that before. Now, if you haven't tried Marmite and don't know what it is, it's a yeast extract that British people love to have on toast. I am not a Marmite fan, I have to say, but there seems to be no middle ground with Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. And I think that that kind of applies to me too. Now, there are other factors. Those are perhaps the main reasons above, but I can't say I don't have others. In the interest of being super honest, I'm also having a crisis of identity. I spent my entire working life as a coach, apparently quite a good one. As I've mentioned on the show, I've been lucky enough to work in some great martial arts and strength gyms all around the world, from, a gym in one of Hong Kong's most exclusive addresses to working in the Royal Abu Dhabi Equestrian Club, the Ritz-Carlton in Seoul, South Korea, some great gyms in Texas and California and Arizona and Massachusetts and Maine. I've been able to travel all over the world and taught hundreds of seminars to thousands of people. I was an author of a certification course that coaches could take. And then the pandemic came along and all of a sudden it just came to a complete halt. In an attempt to avoid that repeating again, because it was certainly not something I want to go through, and I'd imagine that's the same for most of us, then I decided to come to university at 40 years old. And it's certainly not something I ever saw happening in my life, nor did I see there being a pivot from fitness to something that was, like philosophy, basically. So sometimes I feel a bit stuck because I've got this one foot in the past with the fitness and the other in the future with my studies. And I have to say that I think back to, the way my life was when I lived in Hong Kong, for example, and the people that I knew and all the things I had and what I identified with and who I identified with. And I made an episode before where I talked about my kind of anchor person as well there. And just all of that's gone, right? And sometimes I feel that when I come here and I do this research for this show, I'm almost kind of like reliving part of that past life. And that makes me feel really sad because I end up missing a lot. And it just shows really how important things like coping strategies are, and probably just the fact that I don't have one. And I've probably got some kind of PTSD. But yeah, I feel this loss of identity and loss of who I was and what that life was, and this big empty hole. And sometimes coming and doing this show puts me in that mindset where I really, really, really miss it. And I'm also really quite busy. Coming to university, I think a lot of people here are 18 years old. and coming to university, they want to just see how many Jello shots they can do in 60 seconds. Whereas I'm more like, hey, I'm here to study and get a good grade and go on and hopefully get a good job. And so oftentimes I'm dealing with doing multiple essays for uni, and then it can just be a bit much to then have to write another 2,000 word script for the show. And finally, I just want to say really that people can be pretty mean. I've had a bunch of emails in the last 2.5 years that were rude, mean, or inappropriate. I don't think for a moment I'm the only person that deals with that in their workplace, but that would be a fallacious argument. Just because someone else experiences something isn't a justification for you having to experience it. It's not a justification at all. And I have mentioned this on the show before, and I've even had emails saying that I was weak and, you're exactly the type of person I thought you were. You got no backbone. It's just wild to me because I don't understand why people are like this. So I can't say that wasn't a pretty big part of this. And there was a set of emails I got 5 or 6 weeks ago when I did finally just decide I've had it with this and handed in my notice. And it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I would never name and shame anyone on the show because there would be consequences to them for me doing it. And I wouldn't want anyone else to feel bad. But I also do know that my detractors keep tuning in. So if you are listening to this and it was you that sent me multiple emails over the last year telling me things like I was all up in my own head and I didn't understand how people think and that nobody cares about philosophy and nobody cares about logic. And, that wasn't the mean things, but, there was a lot of mean things in those emails. Then I want you to know that you're partly responsible for this. You can't go through life sending off harsh and totally unjustified emails just because you happen to own a keyboard. Be more kind. So there we have it. Now, there may be a new Get Fit guy. I don't know. That's not my department. But if any listeners want to follow and know what I'm going to be doing next, then before the last show, I'll share my Instagram account and my email, and I hope to see as many of you on there as possible. I'm sorry that this week I didn't get into anything fitness related, and it was all a bit of an explanation of my decision to step down as the host of this show. But I promise you all that next week and for the rest of the month, I will share as much as I can about fitness and answer as many questions as I can. So if you have had a burning question that you have been dying to ask me for the last 2.5 years, email it in. I'm going to make one of my last shows an AMA, Ask Me Anything. Please do not even think about asking me anything inappropriate. But, if you've ever wanted to know, what my dog's favorite snack is, what my dog's name is, what my cheat meal is, I don't know, then email in and ask me, and I'll be happy to answer it. I hope everyone has a great week. And if you do want to send me an email, then blow up my inbox on getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Get Fit Guy is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Thanks to the team, Morgan Christensen, Holly Hutchins, Brandon Getchis, and Davina Tomlin. If you have a question for me, leave me a voicemail at 510-353-3104 or send me an email at getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Visit quickanddirtytips.com for more info or check out the show notes in your podcast app.